Let's go over my 10 tips for speeding up your language acquisition right after this. Hola amigos, and welcome back to the Spanish Doctor, here to cure all your language ills today. You may remember that in addition to English and Spanish, I also speak Italian and French. I'm quite good at Korean. I've studied a little bit of German, and I've also taken Latin classes. And finally, I understand Portuguese, read it quite well, although I don't speak it very well. But you may notice that I've been around the language block a few times. I've been to this rodeo before, and I've picked up a few tidbits along the way that I think might be able to help you. Most of what I'll be sharing today will help you with learning the technology that is at your hands and to get the most out of it. Tip number 1, add the language that you want to learn to your keyboards, both on your phone and on your computer. Your computer will tell you if you've misspelled something, especially if you download the language packs for something like Word. The suggestions that you get from your phone might let you know that you misspelled a word, or that there might be a better tense that you hadn't thought to use, but the phone did bring up that tense, so maybe you should be using that tense. And it gets you thinking, should I be using that? Tip number 2, once you're more comfortable with the language, I recommend that you change the language of your phone. Now, if an app is kind of mission critical to what you do, make sure that you investigate before you change the language of your phone whether you can change that app to English only, if that's the language that you function best in, because some apps don't have the option to change the language. The great thing about changing the language of your phone is you get to learn some of the lingo that's used in different apps, especially popular apps like Instagram or Facebook. You get to know what people usually say in that language. Maybe you would have picked a different word, but now you know this is the right word that you should be using. Sometimes you're gonna mess up, you're gonna have some goofy instances. One time when I changed my phone to German, I ended up sending a scammer my location with my iPhone because I wasn't sure about what I had selected there in my messages. So you might have some mishaps like that. Hopefully you won't have too many. Tip number 3, another bonus of changing the language of your phone is that when you do work on something like Duolingo, you will not only get the suggestions that you probably need, but you can also check your pronunciation. If you have speech to text on your device and you enable that, and you're supposed to speak at that moment to Duolingo, speaking to the app will check your pronunciation for you. If I'm saying something like, I'm trying to say something like, wo ist Bahnhof bitte? And I say something like, wo ist Bahnhof bitte? If the app doesn't understand what I'm saying, if my speech to text does not understand me, I will know that there's something wrong with my pronunciation and I'll try to fix it. So it's great for feedback. Tip number 4, try to listen to music in the language that you are studying. When I was studying Italian, French, I got exposed to the type of music that I did like. I did like opera. I did want to know what people were saying in Verdi's operas, what people were saying in Bizet's famous Carmen. I did want to know what was going on, and that was one of my motivations for learning those languages. But later I found out that, whoa, I actually like someone like Yves Montand. I like someone like Eros Ramazzotti. When I studied German, I found out I like someone like Rammstein. Well, I don't really like Rammstein that much, but still, you might find that they're tucked away somewhere in one of those languages. There's a guilty pleasure that you'll find out about, and you'll think, wow, I never would have listened to something like this in my own language, but Now that I listen to it in the other language, I kind of appreciate it, and you become a more well-rounded individual. Another thing that I did when I was studying my languages, and when I still study today, I look up the lyrics. Sometimes I think, hey, I think I'm not getting this whole song. I want to pop up the lyrics online and check them out and see if I can figure out what's going on here and make some connections. And sometimes I'm kind of blown away. Sometimes I think, wow, I didn't know you could express such a sentiment in this way, in this language. This is something that we'd never be able to say in English in the same way. And I feel like so great that I'm able to understand this small or this big aspect of this other culture. It's wonderful. Tip number 5, watch movies in the other language. You might go see first-run movies in the theater, or you might start off with some famous movies from that culture that you're studying. If the movie's famous, you'll have easy access to subtitles. Now, I would recommend that if you're very good at the language, watch the movie without subtitles. You might read a review or two to kind of figure out what it is you're getting into, so you understand the context and you get more out of what people are saying. Or you might watch the movie a first time with subtitles and the second time without the subtitles. And actually, I really meant to say you should watch it with closed captioning. Watch it and read along in the language that they are speaking. Don't read a translation. That'd be much better. Tip number 6, try to get your news in the other language. If you are like me and lots of other people of voting age, you might want to know what's going on in our world. You might want to know about politics. You might want to know about culture. You might want to know about the issues affecting the lives of millions of people or billions of people. And if you are someone that's maybe more into memes and more into reading things for the lulz, you still might get a lot out of what somebody writes in another language, and that is also kind of meme friendly. And you'll see that these memes are spreading around the world in lots of different languages. So you might read a lot, you might read a little, but if you try to stay informed in the other language and you kind of already know what's going on in the world in English or in your own home language, when you see the same thing going on somewhere else and you see it expressed in the way it is in the other language, you'll be able to understand because you'll be familiar with the context, and that's always a great thing. And if you're familiar with the cultural context, that might be even better. If you see that they react to news in a different way than how people are reacting here, you might be very surprised. Tip number 7. Now, sometimes you want to read the news or view a news program in another country, and guess what? It's blocked. So I recommend that if you have a VPN that lets you connect to another country, go for it. Connect to it. I mean, I go to Deutsche Welle when I get a chance, and to see the videos in German, I have to use VPN. Now, you might use a full-fledged VPN service to access news in another country, especially video. Or you might use a browser like the Opera browser. If you go to the Opera browser and go to the settings, you'll be able to change the country that you quote-unquote reside in, so that you are able to view especially videos in the other country, or sometimes there might be music tracks that you just can't listen to any other way. But you might feel more secure going through a dedicated VPN service that you pay for. Tip number 8, join your local language meetups. Now, if you go to a site like meetup.com or probably a Facebook group, you'll find many like-minded people that want to get together and want to learn about the other culture that you're studying and speak in that language. And you might also find people who speak that language natively and who wish to share their language, many times for free, with other people who want to learn that language. I have participated in French and Italian meetups, There might be a small fee sometimes. The last meetup I was in for French, they had a $5 yearly fee because Meetup does charge the host a certain amount of money, and I'm not sure what the structure is like, but I mean, if you can pitch in $5 for a whole year, I mean, that's nothing. That's nothing. That's something you can do. Now, a lot of the local language meetups that you'll find on meetup.com, they might have events for different levels. For example, there might be a meetup for beginners or intermediate/advanced. So make sure you pick what's right for you. Some of the meetups accept anyone at any level. And just make sure that when you go there, you do your best to speak only in the language that you are studying. If you have to consult your phone and look at a dictionary, go for it. I don't think anyone's going to say no. But the point of meetups is to speak in the target language. Tip number 9, seek out expatriate communities. So, assuming that you're not in the country where the language you're studying is the primary language, you might luck out and be able to find an expatriate community nearby. Now, this may be through a group like I mentioned, like meetup.com, or you might find, especially if you are in a bigger metropolitan area, that the language you're studying has many of its speakers in that area, and they might have some type of gathering place. It could be something non-sectarian, non-denominational, or it might be a church. But these sorts of places, whether they're secular or religious, they'll often have festivals, and they'll often look for ways to share their culture with other people, share their language. You may find that they have language schools, that they have culture nights, that they have ways for other people to get involved in their community, or they might not actually have any way for you to participate, but if you knock on the door long enough, they might let you in. Tip number 10, dive into the culture. I did say that you might be able to dive in if you seek out the expatriate community in the country where you reside, but this could be much more than simply attending a festival, simply going to some of their events. You might actually participate in something that was intended only for them. When I lived in South Korea, I was fascinated by this drum called the changu, and I first took lessons for that instrument at a school that was for foreigners. So it was run by Koreans, but they taught foreigners different cultural traditions. I learned how to play that drum, and I also learned how to sing folk songs. Now, this was fine, but I was surrounded by people from all around the world, but not by Koreans. The instructors were Korean, obviously, but the people that were taking the classes were not Korean. So, luckily, by chance, one day I was walking around in my neighborhood. I lived out there for 3 years, and I walked by a building and I heard this drumming, this great drumming sound. I looked at the sign and I saw that this was a group intended for mothers. It was like a drumming class for mothers, and not that they're all around the world and you would know what that is, but that's what I saw, and I went in to check out the scene, and these ladies were quite intrigued by me. They were wondering what it is I was doing there, how I knew about their activity, why I would want to play the drum with them and also sing with them, because they were also singing. They were all ladies and they were all Korean, and I was the only guy that looked like this. I'm here, I want to learn Korean, I'm going to hang out with Korean people. I sought them out and had a great time. Bueno amigos, muchas gracias and thank you for joining me in another episode of The Spanish Doctor. Leave a comment down below telling me which of these tips you think you'll start using right away. Suscríbete, échame un me gusta y nos vemos. Adiós.